So hello, welcome back to the Talkoffamepod podcast with Kylie, and joining us for this episode of the podcast is Jonathan Estabrooks, who is the vice president and producer of the Emitha Studios, director and performer who has worked on the new opera Anna Christie Broadway record 6 on the Billboard Classical with Roberto on the late Joe Masteroff, and 12-time legendary producer Thomas Z. Shepard, and his debut album, These Miles Before, Grammy-winning mixer Dave Reitzas, and worked with jazz singer Jeremy Cirurel, I think that's how you say it, and others. And like things
Cirurel, yeah, yeah.
yeah. I know I'm so bad at names. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm getting this wrong or not. But thank you so much for joining the podcast, Jonathan. So it's an honor to talk with you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I was just saying to you before we started this that I think it's so phenomenal that this is something that you've built, over time. And you said it was born out of the pandemic, and it was a chance to do something interesting. And kudos to you for. There's New York, you can hear in the background.
Go ahead.
Kudos to you for doing this podcast, and thanks for having me on.
Of course, thanks so much for that. And like, I know we were talking about this before, but like, I know you did doing this content since you're like 7 years old and stuff. But like, why do you pursue like songwriting and things you do? I know you started like right under around 7 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I started very young. I was 7 when I started taking voice lessons, and I was in a boys' choir. So I was studying classical voice, but I was also doing musical theater. And it was just, I was like a crazy redhead with a lot of energy, and I was extroverted, and my parents wanted to encourage me to be active and to do something that I enjoyed. So it wasn't, I didn't see a trajectory of this is going to be my job or this is going to be what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. It was just something that I really enjoyed. And so I kind of not fell into it, but I really, yeah, it was just something that I enjoyed. And so kind of over time that progressed to being something that I do every single day. I started as a singer, as many people know me as an opera singer. And, I studied that, and I moved here to New York to go to Julliard. And so that was sort of my trajectory for a long time was I'm going to be a singer, and that's the path. And in the last many number of years, I've been slowly making the transition to being kind of more behind the camera, behind the microphone, as it will. And that's been equally, if not more rewarding, So yeah, I just love the creative process. I played with Lego as a kid, and I'm just like a big kid playing with Lego, like musical Lego, kind of.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm just like always a creative kid, always like moving around and always doing
Yeah.
something entertainment related. Like everything that's like music or acting or something I'm like into. Like I'm like a entertainment movie music nerd, I would call it.
Yeah. And I think nerds are the coolest people. I was a
Oh,
nerd. I always say I'm a recovering nerd, and but I hope I never recover. I think nerdy people are the coolest people. Nerds get made fun of, but honestly, it's because others are jealous of their nerdiness and their passion for what they love to do. And
mhm.
so don't ever lose the nerdiness, because that's going to make you very successful. And that's, people are gonna pound on your door wanting to be a part of what you're doing, especially if you're passionate about it. So that's my advice.
Yes, that's so true. And like, do you still live in New York or did you move?
I do. That's the fire trucks and the ambulances you will hear periodically. I do. I've lived in New York now for 15 years, and I left for the pandemic for a good chunk of that. But yeah, still here in this very overpriced city.
You live like in downtown Manhattan or do you live out?
No, I'm not. I'm uptown. I'm in an area called Washington Heights, which is along the Hudson River, but it's more north on the island. But you get a lot more space, and I'm able to have a dedicated studio space. So I converted one of the bedrooms into a full production studio where I mix all my records and work on my projects.
Yeah, like I go to like New York often. I go there like for events and stuff all the way down there. And plus, like I live like 2 hours away from the city. So I was like, I have to
Yeah,
ask you about New York because like New York is one of my favorite cities, not only probably my
yeah.
favorite city of all time. I love to
Yeah,
visit.
it's fun. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot happening here, and it definitely motivates me, when you're around other people that are passionate about something, and whatever that may be, you're surrounded by that kind of energy in a city like New York. And it's such a creative hub. I think people come here because want to be influenced by that. So yeah.
Like, what is like your favorite place in New York City? Like, do you have a favorite like place to
Ooh.
go to, museum or anything?
I mean, it depends. I mean, there's so many great restaurants and museums and music festivals. I mean, the thing that I love about New York is at any given moment, there's 30, 40, 50 different things happening, whether that's
Mhm.
museum or gallery or art shows or live performances or some little black box theater in the middle of nowhere, Lower East Side comedy show or whatever. And nowhere else on earth do I feel like you have that kind of environment, that there's always a pulse, there's always something going on. So it's hard for me to pick just one. I mean, tonight I'm going to see a friend at Carnegie Hall perform, and last night I was at some other kind of dive bar thing, which is super fun, and then it's just great brunch places. I mean, just like everything, it's sort of the city that it is, the city that doesn't sleep. So I
Yeah,
don't know. Are
it
you
did
are you
not
more of a
sleep.
museum buff or a music festival buff? What's sort of your favorite part of the city?
Ooh, I love the Broadway shows. I love Broadway shows. I'm basically into
Nice.
anything, museums. I'm a big foodie person. I love food. So there's this place by the Winter Garden Theater, right
Hmm.
off of Times Square that I went to see the Music Man a million times. And right, like
Nice.
there's two streets down me, my father would go to. It's a cheesecake place. I forget what it's called. It starts with a
Okay.
C. But me and him would go there every time because it's my favorite restaurant that I would go to the cheesecake because his cheesecake is so good that I'm like, I have to go every time.
Hey, you got your
But
favorite.
yeah, like I haven't been there the last like 2 or 3 times I went there since it was kind of like quick trips. But next time, like I'm like, I have to go to get the cheesecake.
Yes.
But I wish they had
Amazing.
those type of cheesecakes here in PA because they're fantastic.
Amazing. I'll have to check it out.
But like with your work and stuff, you've gotten 3 million views or more with a wide variety of content from short film, documentary, music videos, commercial content, much more. And what projects do you kind of prefer to work on? Like music, behind the scenes, like which one do you prefer to work on?
Yeah, I mean, I call myself a multi-hyphenate, which is a term that basically um, is somebody who is actively involved in many different disciplines, but at a
Mhm.
high level. And before I used to think, the saying, jack of all trades, master of none. And sort of there's this pressure, I think, and it used to be, it's changing, where you're supposed to do one thing and do that your whole life. Like my parents had one job at one company their whole lives, right?
Mhm.
It's so different now. And we are in a world where you pick up a phone and this is a supercomputer, you know?
Yeah.
This is a supercomputer. We can access information, billions and billions of articles and photos and content while we're walking down the street. And so I think because we're exposed to so many different things, I think for certain people, and for me included, I always want variety in what I do. So, I mentioned I had quite a career as a singer, but I was always enjoying the creative process. So I don't think I necessarily love one over the other. I think they all have elements of them that I enjoy. Well, I will
Mhm.
say producing is sort of the perfect marriage of all of my loves. It includes the creative process. It includes organization. I actually like organizing. I really enjoy that. It includes planning and dreaming up an idea. There's a performance element to it. There's there's a team building. So it just encompasses so many of those things that as a performer, it's sort of one thing that you do. You just go on stage. You're a cog in a machine to some extent. You're the performer.
Mhm.
That's it. You go home. And now I'm able to build the machine,
Mhm.
and be part of that. So that's why I love producing so much, because it really encompasses so many different skill sets. I mean, you're a producer. You're producing this podcast. I mean, there's so many
Mhm.
different elements to doing that, from booking your guests to making the appointments to having the interview to writing the questions to the editing process to the distribution. I mean, there's a lot that goes into any sort of creative endeavor. So yeah, I guess the long answer to your question is I really am doing what I love. And it took me a long time to get there, a lot of trial and error. But, I always say you got to try a lot of things, and eventually you'll figure out what your path is meant to be.
Mm-hmm. Like I like what you said because like with like not everything is gonna work out whatever you think it is. Like when you're trying
No.
to do this 1% everything, you're like, oh, I'm gonna be good at this, but then it doesn't turn out a couple months later. It's
Right.
just like growing up as a kid, I didn't know what I wanted to be at all. Like I didn't know
Hmm.
I was the type of person I would quit things easily. Like either
Mm,
I just hated it or I didn't want to do it or I was just lazy to do it or something.
mm,
So because I was like I just didn't like doing things when I was a little kid. But like with the experience and with trying to do things, like that's actually the best part because like as long as you're trying it, you do not know if you're gonna like it until you at least try it. Like with this podcast, for
hmm.
example, I thought this were the last few episodes. Like I said a million times before, but then 2 years later, I'm still going on with this. So this is like you always find your passions and whenever you think like, oh, this is gonna end. Like a matter of
Hmm.
minutes, you know.
Absolutely. And, there's a lot to be said for perseverance. And that's clearly something that you have. And I think a lot of people struggle with not feeling insufficient or
Mhm.
feeling like, why should I even start? Like, I'm not as good as so and so, or why do I deserve to be producing this project when there's a million other producers with way more experience than I do, right? We have this thing called imposter syndrome, right? Where we think
Yeah.
like, well, I'm an imposter. I don't belong here. You belong here like anybody else. Steven Spielberg was once an imposter, right? He was some
Mhm.
young kid with a camera, and look what happened to him. So it's about perseverance, creativity, the willingness to keep trying despite failure, or to push through failure is what results in the greatest successes. I some of my biggest project, and I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the Artists for the Arts project with the NEA. I mean, that was a charity single. It was 2017, 2018. They had just announced they were going to cut funding to the National Endowment for the Arts, and I was emboldened. I was say this is crazy. This organization is such an integral part of funding arts in the US. And so I started a petition on change.org. It kind of went viral. I got about 50,000 signatures, and I said, okay, well, what can I do next? How can I actually do something beyond getting a bunch of signatures? And I had this idea to gather together friends and colleagues and contacts to do the charity single and the music video. And so, but even to the last, like within a week of that, I was in debt $18,000. I mean, I
Oh
was putting
wow.
stuff on a credit card, and I was a young kid in New York. I didn't, and I didn't know where I was going to get the money. And it was pushing, and so many people told me, you're never going to raise the money. This is crazy. You should just stop now. Like, don't spend this money. It's not going to work. And I ignored them, and I kept pushing, because my experience has always been, when people tell me it's not possible, it usually means I'm on the right path.
Oh
Because if I
yeah.
push that much harder through that, it's the haters and those that don't believe in you that are more than likely just trying to shut you down, because maybe
Hmm.
they're jealous of you. And
Yeah.
so I pushed through, and I was able to find a donor, and we got the funds, and we did the thing. And it was like a huge, that, it's interesting you ask about that. That was my first official producing gig.
Oh
I had never
really?
really produced anything of note like that. I mean, I had released my debut album, and I was definitely a part of that producing. But a big project with mega stars like that, no, I had never produced at that level. And
Oh
so
no.
how else are you going to learn how to produce unless you produce?
I
So
know,
I just did
right?
it,
It's just like
you
you
know?
don't know how to do it until you actually do it.
Exactly. So there you go. That was kind of my that's was kind of something that I've learned over the years. And so when people tell me it's not possible, I'm like, "Oh, great. I'm on the right path. That means it is going to happen, because now they told me it's not going to happen, so now I have to show you that it's going to happen."
Yeah, just prove them wrong. They'd be like, "Oh, it sucks to be you, sucker." Like this
Exactly.
happened to me a couple months ago. They told me I couldn't do it, so
Exactly.
just prove them wrong.
Exactly.
But like, as you talk about artists for the arts, like how has it like? How do you guys kind of help NEA? Like, where are some ways you guys kind of approach
Yeah,
to
so I
help
mean,
them?
that was a project that was sort of a singular project, which came, we came together in 2018 to do that. The Americans for the Arts was the organization that we were funding for, because you can't actually fund directly for the National Endowment for the Arts. They don't accept private donations. So we teamed up with artists. Our single was through a group called Artists for the Arts, but we
Mhm.
teamed up with Americans for the Arts, which is a nonprofit that funds for arts education and arts in the country, and they're one of the largest in the country. So we teamed up with them, and that was just, I mean, I remember I got on Twitter and I didn't know who was going to release it, and I just sent a tweet to the CEO of Broadway Records, and I said, "Hey, I want to do this crazy thing. I have this crazy idea," and he took a meeting with me, and he opened up his Rolodex of contacts, and we were able to pull in some phenomenal people to be a part of it. So yeah, that's what happened there, and it was a very, very unexpected turn of events. But we were able. I think we helped in our small way, because ultimately the National Endowment for the Arts did receive its funding and then some. So we were part of that chorus of noise that was saying, we need to save this. Like the funding needs to continue, and here's why. And so I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the group of people that came together to do it, gave of their time and talents.
Yeah, there is some crazy people on that list. Like I
Yeah.
looked at it earlier and I was like, oh my God, there's so many crazy people that I couldn't imagine how much you probably thought it was like pretty insane that the pretty much everyone that was involved.
Yeah. I mean, we actually had a casting director who came on board to help put together the cast, and we reached out to so many people, and we got a lot of no's, or a lot of people's schedules didn't line up, but we had the ability through this casting director to reach out to the Sarah Bareilles and the Josh Grobens of the world, and they weren't available, but we got some phenomenally talented people on there, Chris Mann, Annie Golden, lots of Broadway stars, Ashley Brown, cast of Hamilton. So like just a really interesting cross section of people. And it's crazy. It's 6 years ago now. It seems like a lifetime ago. So much has happened since then, but it was a pivotal project for me. And so yeah, thanks for asking about it.
Absolutely. And like with all the experience like you've gotten over the last couple of years since like you first started out, like why do you think experience is important, especially in this like type of industry? Why do you think it's kind of important to get like roles and all these things?
Oh, you mean why? Sorry, the question is, why do you think experience matters?
Yeah.
Experiences, I think, hold equal, if not more, value than education alone.
Oh yeah.
I think we're so focused on, I got to get a college degree. This is the path that I'm supposed to be on. And granted, I have 2 degrees. However, I have learned through experience that is not a requirement.
Yeah.
And it is so expensive, and so many young kids are in debt, hundreds of thousands of dollars from going to college. Oh, there goes my light. And they may have benefited way more from simply doing the thing, simply trying it and making a mistake and learning from it. So I think experience is the biggest learning, is the most powerful learning tool that we have. And experience comes from just doing. Just do it. Nike got it right. Just do it. See what happens.
Like with that, like being said, like with like obviously with doing getting experience done, like of course college is important to go to. Not like college is not a requirement. Like I know some people think it might be like a requirement to get education, but it's not like a requirement to do. It's not like going to high school and all that stuff. That stuff is different than college, but like with the more experience is more important than going to college. Like I probably with myself doing now, I probably learned like I more things right now than probably what I learned in college in 3 years from now, 2 years from now. Because I'm a sophomore in high school and I have 2 years of high school. So like I'm not sure if I'm like once I go to college in 2 years, wherever I end up going, I probably think myself like, oh, I probably know all these things they're teaching me that I probably already know from the experience. Like sometimes you're like, is college sometimes even worth it with all the experience I'm getting,
Yeah, I think it's such a personal decision, and I think what's important is to weigh all the options. And I think for anybody who's looking at college, there are certain careers that a degree is necessary. If you want to be an astrophysicist or a rocket engineer or a mathematician or a brain surgeon, you do need college. You do need a high level of training in those skills. But there are also so many trades. You could go to trade school and be a carpenter or a plumber or a house builder or any of these things, which are well paid, hands-on jobs that don't require a college education. And so I think, college, like medicine, unfortunately, in this country, is a profit-based industry.
Yeah.
It's about making money, which is sad that education in America is about profit, because it is. Many of these private universities are just that. They're private, they're businesses. And so I think experience is really, really valuable. And so I think it's such a personal decision, and I'm not going to tell somebody what they should or shouldn't do. I just know that for me, doing the thing has been way more valuable than learning how to do the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. And like during the college years, you graduated from Julliard School, in which you were hailed by the New York Times as a robust baritone with your experience above and behind the scenes. Like, how did Julliard kind of teach you about your craft and how the industry kind of works itself?
Yeah. I mean, Juilliard was a really interesting experience in that you had a lot of individuals who were sort of top of their class from all over the world, and all of a sudden the best of the best are all now in the same room. And so now everybody's ego gets cut down a little bit. It's like you're no longer the best at your school because now you're with all these other bests. And so very quickly it taught me, I like to think I've always been humble, but it certainly taught me to be humble about where I was at and knowing that there's plenty of very talented people in the world. And for me, it was exposure. It was exposure to these other talented artists. It was coaches. It was teachers. It was the network. And that's what I say, what is good about a school. The right school can have a network. You're not going to meet those people if you don't go to college. Now, there are other ways to network, but college, and Juilliard specifically, opened up this network of arts professionals to me that I would never have otherwise had the chance to work with and had the chance to meet.
Like that's the best part about like college, is that like you'll meet people from different states and from all around the world. Even though like college might seem like a kind of like a bus, like we're like learning every single day, hours, classes. I know like some people do not like school or going to wake up early and all that stuff. I hate that. I hate waking up too early because I'm like I'm a morning person, but I'm also a night person depending on the day. But like, why was like Juilliard kind of like a fit for you to go to school like there instead of the other kind of performing arts type of school?
What you mean? Why did I choose Juilliard?
Yeah.
I it was a long shot. I didn't think I would get in. I mean, it was Juilliard. I thought I'm not going to get into Juilliard, but I tried. We've been talking about if you don't try, you don't know. And so I auditioned, and I happened to get in. And it was one of those opportunities that I felt was really important to take advantage of. And I'm glad that I did. Would I have gone to another great school if Juilliard hadn't said yes? Absolutely. But it was in the city. It was in New York. It was exciting. It was sort of, I guess, an Ivy League of music schools, call it that. So it certainly the name has helped, and it's opened a lot of doors. But yeah, it's just one of many great schools in the country.
Yeah, it's like Juilliard is one of the best schools in terms of like performing arts, and especially in New York City. Like, who wouldn't consider going to New York City? Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a tough city. It's a tough city to survive in, and the first few years can be really tough in a city like New York. But you're surrounded by so much passion and dedication to a craft, whether that's in fashion or music or art or what have you, or business, that it really encourages you a lot to push yourself.
Like that's something like people like do when in the cities, that like you'll like meet people that make you push yourself when you don't want to and help you grow.
Absolutely.
Especially in a city like New York City or Los Angeles or some big cities for like the entertainment. It's just like you'll find tons of people that will push you or are better than you, than like you're like
Absolutely.
in more experience than you got in your maybe 10 years of acting experience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But like, if you could tell yourself one thing when starting out, what would it be?
Um, you mean a younger version of me? What would I say to myself? I would say don't be afraid to fail because you will fail and you'll fail over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And care, but don't care. And what I mean by that is you do you, right? You know the saying. It's like you do
Mm-hmm.
you. Do what you want to do. Do it passionately. Do it with professionalism. Do it with passion and professionalism. Do the work. Do the research, and forget the haters. And I know it's hard. It's hard to live that. It's easy for me to give that advice, but when you're in it, it's hard to take that advice and go, because we all care what people think. I mean, Instagram
Mm-hmm.
is the definition of, oops, there goes my lights again. I'm just failing on my production today. But like, essentially it's all about, like, I've got these fancy lights here, my little portable
Ooh.
lights. But where was I? But I was just saying, it's all about, if you don't try, you won't know. And so people will tell you it's not possible, and you just persevere. And so my advice would be, know that you will fail and embrace the failure as part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't care so much about what people think, like genuinely in your soul, in your core, you have so much power. You really do, because you don't care. You really don't. And that's
Yeah, you
hard. A
really
younger
don't.
version of myself wouldn't have believed that. In high school, you think your whole world is high school. It's like, if I'm not the football star and the cheerleader, and I don't, I'm not everybody's favorite person. I can't tell you the number of people who they peak in high school and then they don't really go anywhere after that. So
Oh yeah.
I was awkward in high school. I was a nerdy music kid. I had a lot of friends, but I was just an awkward kid, and but I loved what I did. I loved my music, and I loved creating, and I found my community. I found my tribe. And
That's the
so,
most important thing, though. It's like you
yeah,
find your tribe and you find your friends. It's supposed to be your rest of your life. Like that's the most important thing. As long as you have your support and find the right friends, that's the most important
absolutely.
thing.
There's always somebody out there that loves what you love, right? And is as
Mm-hmm.
passionate about what you're passionate about.
Right.
And those people are out there, and you will find those people, especially with this thing. I mean, you can find them anywhere. You
Mm-hmm.
found me for your
Social media.
podcast just
Social
by
media is
being
a
on
big
Instagram,
tool.
you know?
Yeah, social media is such a big tool. If social media wasn't a thing, we probably wouldn't be talking right now.
Exactly. So it's another opportunity to meet people and connect.
And like recently, you came out with a single called "Songs of Ireland." Is this song about Ireland at
It's
all?
actually a mashup. It's a mashup of two popular Irish songs.
Ooh.
Obviously Danny Boy, which everybody knows, and another. And so I had an arranger do a mashup, sort of a medley of those two songs. And it was something that I mean, I hadn't released music in a long time, and it was time for me to make something for me. I spend so much time mixing records and making things for other people, for our clients through Emitha. And so it was exciting to put a single together. And I actually have another single coming out in in June, the end of June. Sorry, the beginning of June, June 9th. I have a new single coming out. So I'm not sure if this
Ooh,
show will have aired by then, but it'll be out on streaming and all of the platforms. So,
amazing. What can you tell us about that single though? I
well,
don't
it was
realize very
written
much.
for me. Yeah, it was written for me. Two songwriters in Nashville wrote the song for me, and it's sort of a high energy kind of Josh Groban-y kind of vibe. You think of the song Brave by Josh Groban, it's got a similar kind of pulse and energy to that. And yeah, it's kind of in that classical crossover realm, and I've been tinkering with the mix for a long time, and I'm excited for people to hear it.
I can't wait to listen away. Make sure to stay tuned for that, people. And that's all I have to say. Make sure to stay tuned for that. But like, who are some of your favorite singer-songwriters that you like to listen to in terms of
Oh
songwriting?
man, I've got a
I
few.
know there's a million, probably a million of them.
I know there's so many great singer-songwriters. I will say one of my favorite artists right now, two of my favorite artists, and I went to see them at the Kennedy Center. I hadn't been to a concert in years, but I went to DC. Cody Fry
Ooh,
uh, is an amazing. He's like a pop singer-songwriter, but he writes for orchestra. Check
ooh.
out Cody Fry. So he writes these amazing pop songs, but they're for symphony orchestra. It's such a cool
Oh
mashup, you
wow.
know. So you've got kind of the rhythmic pulse um, of the pop song, and then you've got this full orchestration around it. So that's really, really cool. And I just discovered him through Spotify. It was one of those suggested artists. And so it's Cody Fry, and I'm trying to remember. See, now I'm blanking. I'm going to look it up on this device of mine here. But Cody Fry did a concert with one of his, very good collaborator and friends. And you're going to edit this out probably, right? I'm looking. I'm going to give you the name here. Ben Rector. There it is. Cody Fry and Ben Rector. I saw them at the Kennedy Center, and it was just phenomenal. It was such
I have to check them out now. I kind of like, once I said Cody Fry, I was like, oh, like that chicken fried song in like a commercial. Like that's literally when you said that name, that literally came like in mind, like, oh, cold chicken fried. That song.
Yeah. Different. No, probably. Yeah, but no, Cody Fry, he's awesome artist. Him and Ben Rector are phenomenal. But I mean, sometimes I like my 90s hits, my 80s or 90s running playlist. When I go for a run, a little bit of Whitney Houston, a little bit of, Celine Dion, represent Canada, like I love a good power ballad. And then other days I'm really into jazz or classical, if I'm on a long drive, I love listening to classical music. I mean, I grew up around that and I studied it for a long time. So I think most people have a pretty eclectic mix in music. Nobody is just a fan of one artist.
Oh yeah.
Although the Swifties are pretty obsessed, but I mean,
oh yeah.
But they also, they like other artists. Most people have a real mix. Very few of us listen to entire albums. We listen to singles now. It's, we jump around from artist to artist. So there you go. That's
it's just like I listen to everything: pop, country, rap, hip hop, everything. I like even like I'm into like oldies music, like 90s, 80s, like my parents' generation of music. Like it's really weird because like obviously my parents were with that music, and obviously now I'm listening to that music, obviously. Right. But now I'm like into pop and country person. I'm a huge country music person. I love country music. Like whenever I'm in the car or sometimes when I'm driving, I'll pull up my Spotify and just connect it to Bluetooth and just play country music out loud. My dad gets so annoyed because he hates country music. So just go keep spamming it to, just keep it playing.
Love it.
But like the last thing I want to talk with you about, I know you kind of added this a little bit earlier, but like, what is some advice for people in music?
Ooh, I mean, I think it's very similar to any kind of profession or any kind of passion. I think music is one of those languages that is universal. You don't have to speak the language that's being spoken in a song or a lyric. It could be Italian, German, French, Russian, who knows? But you can understand the passion, you can understand the message, the emotion behind it. So I think there's a great responsibility as musicians to honor that and to really be authentic in the writing of music and in how you present it. I think it's easy to think of music as a business, which it is for many people. It is a business. I mean, we run a business at Emitha, obviously, but more than that, it is a passion, and it is kind of a window to the soul, right? A great song will really make you feel something, and I think as human beings, we are desperately looking to feel and to connect, especially after COVID. And I think music is one of the great connectors. And so I would say to anybody, anybody out there who is interested in music or is a musician or is a creator, I mean, you have such a beautiful opportunity here and a privilege to do that. And so, approach it as such and know that you can and will have an effect on people in a way that a mathematician or a banker or so many other jobs, they don't have that kind of effect on people. Nothing wrong with those jobs, but they're not as powerful as the arts. And I think they're so valuable, and we need to protect them because they make the fabric of our society worth being a part of.
Yeah, you're right about that because like of course, and if they're not in the industry, their job's still important. But obviously, if you're like an artist or something, like as long as like you're making an impact. I know with music is such a big part of people's lives, especially mine during the pandemic. I know like a lot of people kind of lost that social kind of face-to-face interaction type of thing.
Hmm.
Because you couldn't leave their house, people were scared. But then like when the pandemic stopped, like people were just so thrilled to leave their houses and actually have a conversation about things instead of
Yeah.
doing it on the screen like we're doing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, it's a great communication, a great tool for communication and a great tool for connection.
True that. And like I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're amazing. And I wish you all the best with everything. And thank you everyone for listening. And I really appreciate everyone listening to this episode. And I hope you guys just tune in for the next couple of episodes of the podcast. And thank you so much, Jonathan, for coming on. You are terrific. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Lovely to meet you.
You too. If you ever need help with anything, feel free to reach out.
Great.
Great.
Thanks.
Have a great rest of your day.
Okay, take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.